Am I live? I am. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stacy Storino. Welcome back to my channel. This is the Mama Saga, and this is a place where this Marvel-loving mama is typically a lawyer and a mother by day, and then I am a Marvel theorist breaking down shows like She-Hulk on Disney Plus, and happy Disney Plus Day while we're live. This is September 8th. I will have to go back, watch a bunch of Disney Plus-esque stuff, and then do live streams on my channel throughout the day. We have live streams and replays here. We also have pre-edited videos. And down below, both on the live and on the replay, I have linked my She-Hulk video playlist, so you can catch up with myself and my growing community. And I'm really grateful for all of them who watch, whether it's on the live or whether it's on the replay. I am an actual lawyer. I am licensed to do business in the state of, or to practice, I should say, in the state of New York, and not California, where Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, does her thing. I have practiced federal law. Some of the stuff that she does could cross over into federal law. One of the cool things about the weekly live stream and replay breakdowns that I do every Thursday, as her episodes continue to drop, we're roughly halfway through season 1. She might get season 2. There's already indications that as long as this series performs, Disney/Marvel Studios would be willing to invest and do season 2, but it's not official yet. I think this is a great show so far. And from a lawyer's perspective, during these weekly breakdowns, for sure, I actually will go and cherry pick some legal stuff that's going on and kind of give you the real life versus the fantasy version of things. And I have to say, especially if you watch the replay from last week, episode 3, you're going to find they really went through some really great stuff on the criminal end of things when she was dealing with Emil Blonsky, or the Abomination, and getting him paroled. And then on the other hand, in the civil end of things, where Jennifer worked in tandem with Anthony Pugliese, one of her co-workers at her current firm, to help win a civil case on behalf of Dennis Bukowski, who she used to work with at the DA's office. So, needless to say, spoiler alert, if you have not seen episode 4 and you think that a review like this is going to ruin your enjoyment of episode 4, this is not a spoiler-free review. This is spoilers galore. So I'm going to go through, this is only my first watching on this replay. As I go back and unpack even more, I'll have edited videos. That's usually the deal that go up to my channel. So without further ado, this is my breakdown after my first viewing of episode 4. And the title is This Not Real Magic? Which is a phrase that gets uttered later on in this first episode. All I can say is I'm a hardly Eric Voss from New Rockstars, but and praise to him and his channel. But Mephisto, to me, is definitely confirmed in the MCU Earth 616 now. I mean, we're in the midst of the multiverse saga. Phase 4 is closing out. We're going into Phase 5 by the end of this year, early next year. But they definitely have heavy-duty Easter egged Mephisto quite a bit throughout this episode, even all the way out to the post-credits, but long before the credits, I should say credit scene. So my gosh, but we'll go through it. Okay, so She-Hulk's new client is Wong, and he's suing a magician Donny Blaze for the unauthorized use of the mystic arts. So we start at what appears to be a magic show, a public magic show. It's done in a theater, and a man who is Donny Blaze, who in and of itself is kind of like a ghostwriter Easter egg. And again, speaking of Eric Voss, he's the one that first started talking about that on New Rockstars, so I definitely want to give him credit for that. I can't wait to see the video that he's going to do where he like wigs out that Mephisto is definitely being Easter egg to death in this episode. They're really going all out to not just show like B, C, and D listers showing up in the She-Hulk series so far. They've had quite a few A-listers, even Hulk and the Abomination aside. You do have Wong, and so that's really cool. But Donny Blaze himself isn't Ghost Rider. That's not a name that Ghost Rider's gone by, but it's a name that's very similar to one that he has. And Eric Voss had said from a previous trailer, and I agree with him, that one of the posters for this magic show act in episode 4 that Donny Blaze does kind of calls to mind Ghost Rider. Now, you could say in and of itself that Donny Blaze, if he's kind of somewhat a bit of an Easter egg-esque connection to Ghost Rider, that's kind of already your first, but it's a very more distant connection to the presence of Mephisto, who, of course, is a big enemy of Ghost Rider. So the magician is levitating on stage. It appears that this is a real thing that he's doing. He's seated cross-legged. He's looking at the audience. He's midair. And he says, "The art of levitation. Are you not amazed?" The audience is really kind of not amazed. It's a lot of an older crowd. There's some younger people in the audience too. They're kind of talking amongst themselves. I don't even think anybody's clapping. He starts summoning fire to get their attention. Some people are looking, but they're still not clapping. They're kind of bored. Some people are yawning. So he says that he needs assistance from a volunteer. He calls the volunteer up. Now, usually these volunteers in magic shows are plants. They're people who kind of work with the magician, and so they're kind of in on the act. I was kind of wondering, as he calls up Madison, who we've seen in trailers leading up to now, I thought in the beginning that Madison was a plant, but it turns out she's not. She's just in the audience. She's with 2 other friends. They've all got drinks in hand. They all appear to be a little bit tipsy and rowdy. He calls her up. She says the line from the trailer as she sits there and spells out her name. She's like, Madisyn, but the Y's not where you think. And I'm like, oh my God, you know? So she's totally a ditz. She's totally lit like a Roman candle. So he sits there and he does another trick while she's, up there. She's on stage. She's still drinking her drink. And that's where he identifies himself as Donny Blaze. So he says, how about I try something with a little more heat? So he whips out a sling ring. Now, I had done a video, and I'll put it in the show notes on the replay, but you can check it out on my channel on another tab if you're watching this. Otherwise, I did do a video where I theorized about Madisyn, who was she, because it's not a name that I saw in Marvel Comics. I've been reading Marvel Comics since 1986, starting with the Uncanny X-Men and the New Mutants, and then it spread from there. And I've never seen or heard that name used. I did a little bit of research, never saw or heard that name used, especially in Marvel Comics or the MCU. So she's totally, I theorized that she was the student who went to Carmitage, and Wong ends up suing her, or she's involved in a lawsuit with him. I was kind of right on the latter, but it turns out that Donny Blaze is involved in the former. He is, it turns out later, again, I cried, spoilers. He's wearing the sling ring. He was a student over at Carmitage. And as Wong explains later, he's no longer a student, and he really shouldn't be practicing magic. So he very sloppily, kind of called to mind Doctor Strange, the original movie where Stephen Strange was having trouble conjuring a sling ring. This guy does it. It's a mess, but now he's got the audience's attention, right? This is a little bit more showy. He's got the audience's attention. They're starting to clap. There's a guy behind the scenes that's really, cheering him on and is very excited for him and everything. So it's cool. So Madisyn is absolutely plastered. He's conjured. Bye, honey. Bye, sweetheart. Bye, Steve Ames. Have a good day at school. Bye, Steve. Have a good day at work. Donny Blaze had in the meantime conjured some fake silk roses, and so Madisyn's plastered, and she's like, FYI, these don't smell like anything. But she turns around to see the portal because now everybody's clapping. This is interesting to them, and her reaction is all ew, which was so funny. But then we have a sudden scene change, and we're in Kathmandu, Nepal. So freaking this theme song from The Sopranos is playing. So if you've ever seen The Sopranos before, you'll laugh. I definitely want to take a bit of a deeper dive into the Sopranos lore and match it up with the MCU lore, and I'll probably do a separate video on it. I owe a couple videos to my channel, but like I said, I'm a lawyer. Sometimes it picks up and it gets a little busy. So Wong is in Kathmandu at Kamartaj. He's seated on a couch in his home, I'm guessing. He has a shot or a drink and he's watching The Sopranos. Madison drops in out of nowhere. She portals in out of nowhere. Her fake roses are still in her hand. Or so I thought, because it turns out that it's apparently a still beating heart and her hand is all bloody. Now to that I say ew. So she asks Wong where she is, and she goes, "What happened to all the goblins?" Now, you as a viewer, you're like, goblins? I didn't see any goblins. Demons, devils, nothing. All I saw was a portal opening up, and a scene that you couldn't easily make out when Madison turned around and she was like, ew. So when she was on stage at the show with Donny Blaze, so you're like, what is that? What is she referring to? Where the heck did she still get a still beating heart and bloody hands? So then she sees Wong and she's like, who are you? Are you the Goblin King? So that made me think, I don't know if you've ever seen this. Let me know in the comments down below if you know what I'm talking about. The movie Labyrinth with David Bowie, because David Bowie was the Goblin King. So Wong's like, where did you come from, miss? And Madison explains that she grew up in Fort Lauderdale, but her dad moved to Phoenix with his girlfriend. So she sometimes goes to visit him. She's obviously drunk, but she's obviously also not the brightest light in the chandelier. So she's like, oh, I go there to Phoenix sometimes. And he's like, what cut rate magician sent you here? Right? Wong doesn't understand. Just nobody out of nowhere just shows up in Kamartaj with no point to it. So he's a little thrown. So Madison continues to explain. She says, no, he sent me. So she doesn't even identify Donny Blaze. He sent me to some fifth dimension or dark dimension. I couldn't make out the word. Like I said, this is my first viewing. And a talking goat sent me here. So I'm thinking between the blood magic, the still beating heart, sacrifice, and a talking goat in some fifth dimension or dark dimension or whatever, that's reference number 2 to Mephisto. So at this point, I'm like, oh my God, totally Mephisto. So then she continues to explain to Wong that he, I guess the talking goat, sent her out of a lava pit in exchange for 6 drops of her blood. So again, it's my first viewing. I'll tell you right now, having been a fantasy, sci-fi, and comic book geek for decades, blood magic always means dark arts, evil, devil, demon stuff. Again, this is the 3rd reference to Mephisto, and maybe we're 5 minutes or so into the episode. So I'm already 3 confirmations that Mephisto is part of Earth 616 at this point. But again, we're in the multiverse saga. How shocked can you be? Blood magic is always evil. Then Madison says she browned out and then she just suddenly showed up with Wong, and that's it. So she sees the episode of The Sopranos that Wong has on his television, and it's now on pause. And she goes, this is the one where they kill Adriana. So she totally watched The Sopranos. They automatically have something in common. The way the episode plays out, all the way to the stinger or end credit scene, is great with them. I just can't believe what they're doing with the 2 of them. But Wong just conversationally is like, they just got pregnant. And, Madison's like, whatever, they're pregnant only 3 days, right? So Wong's all, someone's going to pay for this. Okay. And Madison just plops on the couch. She's eating food all vapidly. And then the opening credits for She-Hulk runs. So Jennifer's in her kitchen. She's drinking coffee. She automatically breaks the 4th wall for the first time in this episode. She does it several times throughout. And she's like, you look happy, referring to the audience. She goes, I guess you saw that Wong is back. Everyone loves Wong. Well, we do. And Wong is in everything now. He's he's taken over for Samuel Jackson. Nick Fury. He's just an endless presence everywhere, large or small. So her father, Morris, comes in. He shows up with a shovel and a paper bag full of stuff. It's unexpected. She didn't expect him coming. And she's like, why are you here? What's all this stuff? And he goes, after the scare you had, I'm here to beef up security. So this already calls to mind the comic book saga, the more classic Marvel comic book saga, where Morris is her father. He's like a sheriff in the comic books. I do not believe he's that here. But he was very protective of his daughter, as lots of fathers can be. But like, she's a She-Hulk. She does not need his help, right? Sometimes her dad meddling in things, he could end up getting hurt himself, just adding to her problems. So, but I like how it's kind of a callback to the comic book saga. It's kind of a, parallel or crossing over really into the Disney Plus series. So, so dad was similarly protective with his daughter, although it's never really necessary, and it's really not necessary here. So Morris explains he's got locks, he's got an alarm system, he's got pepper spray for her. Is any of this stuff a bad idea? No, but again, she's a Hulk. She's a She-Hulk. And when she asks about the shovel, he's like, for digging holes. Let's just leave it at that. So he obviously has no problem with his daughter using deadly force if deadly force is used against her. So she's like, don't be ridiculous. I'm a Hulk. It's fine. And he goes, my daughter's attacked by 4 men and I'm supposed to do nothing. You got to be honest. Like, if this were real life and your kid was a superhero, you might feel dinky, like bringing in stuff trying to help them, but you love your kids. So it shows Morris to be the sympathetic character that they introduced him as, and he is continuously going to be, which matches a lot of the comic book saga. So the father asks, well, what did the police say? Because, of course, if someone were to attack you in real life, ideally you'd call the police. They'd come and investigate. They'd write up a report. They'd do something. But it's clear that she hasn't called the police. He's mad. And she's like, listen, I've been a prosecutor long enough to know they're not going to catch these guys. Besides, these guys had stolen some magical, mystical stuff from the end of episode 3 from a construction worker in New Asgard. So they at least had magical artifacts. They kind of knew about her and about superhumans using powers. They could be the wrecking crew, but even so, they could be dangerous, right? So, so she's like, whatever. And her father's like, well, what if they come back? She goes, I'll kick their butt again, and then you can use a shovel. So to me, the shovel is also like another Sopranos weave-in or callback. Well, really a weave-in, because, there wasn't, okay, spoilers for The Soprano too, The Sopranos as well. If you've not seen it and you were planning on seeing it, I cry spoilers. But, they did end up killing Adriana a couple seasons in on The Sopranos. And they walked her out to the woods. They shot her and they had a shovel and they buried her, because that's, what could happen if you mess with the mob. Anyway, there's a scene change and they're back at the office at Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. I've done a video on my channel that breaks down the GLK and H firm, the comic book saga, and the projected at the time, because this series hadn't started yet, crossovers. And I do explain who Jennifer Walters works for and why that's important in the comic book saga. It is translating out very nicely in the She-Hulk series on Disney Plus. And so far I seem to have nailed it in terms of her relationship with her boss, Holden Holloway. I do think that so far, unless they do a big swerve, he's really a sympathetic character. He's a smart lawyer. He's a smart equity partner. He's bringing in business to his firm. But during my live stream / replay from last episode 3 on my channel, I explained how they're doing little poker's tells to show that he's still like protective of her as his associate. And he's not going to let someone like, in that case, Dennis Bukowski, be disrespectful to her. Even though Dennis is an attorney from the DA's office, because some partners would be kissing up to the DA's office if they did criminal law. They don't want to piss off a DA or a senior ADA or a junior ADA. But Holden Holloway didn't care. All right, so I was looking to see what kind of Easter eggs they had on Jennifer's computer screen. She's got a Microsoft to-do list on. And she has this huge long to-do list. So one point that they make is she's scrolling through and through and through. This is everything she's supposed to do today, right? And I will grant you, if you freeze the screen, you're going to see it's a healthy mix every single screen. where it's business stuff that she has to do and personal stuff. But even if you culled out the personal stuff, which there's quite a bit of that, excuse me, the business stuff, there's quite a bit, and you can see that it's a healthy mix of both civil and criminal type stuff, which we saw Jennifer handle directly and assist Anthony Puglisi in terms of handling. But I did spot a couple of things that are noteworthy. She's still working on Blonsky's parole. Like in the aftermath, there's a bunch of stuff that you have to file, through the time of his release and even after his release. For him as a client with the state, I really didn't do criminal law, but I have friends on both sides of the equation who have. I was simply a civil attorney, but I've got some cool breakdowns for stuff that happens later on in this episode. But amongst other things that she has to do, she has to finalize the Blonsky injunction. She has to prepare guidance for Blonsky's inhibitor. Remember, he's got the inhibitor collar that he's not court ordered yet, but ordered by the parole board to wear. That's part of his agreement so that he could secure his parole. They don't want him appearing as the abomination. Like I said last week, there's definitely trailers that show that he's running around in a white t-shirt at a rally. It's probably on his retreat, right? He's got superhuman people there as clients and he's high-fiving them. So is he following the wear the inhibitor at all times, don't be abomination rule? Obviously not. She's also has to call Emil's parole officer. So that's Emil Blonsky again. And yes, he has a parole officer and likely has to check in with this officer every single week. Offer highlights from supply clerk purple and green while her logo is purple and green. Edit her to-do list. She puts aside 2 hours, which is ridiculous. 2 hours for this task. Obviously, she's preparing herself buffer. So that she can kind of take it a little easier, which so feels like junior associate to me. Although she's got a corner office and you do see that she's working with a paralegal and she's also working with Anthony Puglisi, who may be more junior to her because she has to work with him to finish Runa paperwork and, set up a Runa order of protection for him. She's meeting with Nikki. She's meeting with clerks. So she is a more senior associate. She's got at least 5 years of experience under her from what I gather from the series. So, usually after 5 years or so, depending upon your experience or you're working your way up the ladder at a single firm or experiences if you lateral move or move from other firms, because again, I've been a lawyer since 1998. So, within about 5 years to 7 years, you really should no longer be a junior associate. By 10 years, for sure, you should be a senior associate, or at least a senior ADA if you're in a criminal situation. And in the private sector, you could start being considered for partner after about 10 years. If you're really stellar, it could be after 5 years. They don't want to just elevate juniors to partners no matter how good they are. So you have to incubate at a firm for around 5 years typically for that to happen, typically. So her saying that she needs 2 hours to edit her to-do list is really a poker's tell that, yes, she works hard. Yes, she's smart, but she's kind of trying to carve out extra time for herself. There's another listing, meet Nikki in the bathroom at 11:47. What the heck? It's also funny. She's got a listing in there, schedule summer associate interviews, and she's got a brown face next to it. But right under that, it says schedule summer associate outings, and she's got a smiley face next to that. In my experience working in the private sector as a W-2 employee for 17 and a half years, believe me, I've interviewed associates, I've interviewed staff, I've interviewed summer associates. Summer associates could kind of be a bummer because you're putting out all of this effort for someone who may or may not even end up being hired by your firm. Summer associates, they do tend to be younger than the average starting attorney. They haven't finished law school yet. It's not always the case. And they could just be goofballs, right? So it's just and you're managing one or more goofballs that are summer associates and trying to get them to do real work. And this isn't just office work. Attorney work is a whole nother level. So interviewing them, onboarding them, and having them around for a summer, I would say it kind of feels like babysitting, but it's even worse because you literally have to like ride them around in a freaking wheelbarrow to get them to do all the work that they need to do. Have I seen exceptions to the rule? Yes. They come and they lock in a week or two, but summer associates are a lot, right? So she's not too happy about having to, interview summer associates, but she is very happy about planning summer associate outings, which of course is more fun, but this is also kind of a callback to the comics because the Jennifer Walters / She-Hulk that worked at various firms, she was a goofball. She was lively. She did get fired in the comics for making photocopies of her butt in an office party and breaking the copier in the process. So, finish rune paperwork with Pug is another entry. Then, interestingly, she's got another entry, buy and read How to Make Friends and Influence People, which is a classic in business. It was written by Andrew Carnegie. Most business people want to read that book. A lot of partners should read that book, or people who are on the partnership track. So I'm not a bajillion% surprised to see that on her list. Then partially obscured on the first screen, there's another Easter egg where she's like, got to sign up for Big and Tall membership because, she's a gigantic woman. So she may not be obese or morbidly obese, but she's probably got to go suit shopping in the Big and Tall section of any department. She's got enter expenses. Attorneys hate expense accounts. Like they love it because they want to get back their mileage and their tolls or anything that they laid out on cases. They want to get reimbursed, but it's like more busy work. So I used to do my billing and my expenses contemporaneously, meaning as I did them, I filled everything in. Because if you don't, then you go back and it's a whole nother layer of Dante's Inferno because it's just more work to do. If you don't make it like a more frictionless experience, it's hard to keep up with all of that. The average attorney has to bill 40 to 50 hours a week. That is not the same as working. It doesn't typically include your commutation time. A lot of clients now, both plaintiff and defense type clients, even insurance defense type clients, the insurance companies in many cases won't even let you bill for travel time anymore. So you might get expenses back from your law firm, but you're not going to be able to bill for the travel. So it gets even harder and harder and harder. Like her 11:47 meeting in the bathroom with Nikki isn't going to be something that she can cover with billable time. 2 hours of going through her to-do list and or entering her billing and or doing her expenses. That's not billable time. I know in New York, and I don't think it's different in California, you can't bill for like even conversations with a client where all or most of it is about billing. If all the conversation is about billing and or they're questioning a bill or they're reviewing a bill with you, you can't even bill for it. So looking through this as a more experienced attorney, I'm like, Jennifer is young. She is in her 30s. She's kind of digging her grave. It's going to be really, really hard for her to be able to keep up with the billable minimums of really any firm out in the private sector. She worked in the DA's office, and DA's office, as I understand, because I never did criminal law, and insurance defense, which I've done plenty of through the years. I've also done plaintiff's work. I've also worked in the private sector. But like insurance defense and district attorney type stuff, they may have you enter billing as an accountability method. Yes, I worked the whole day. Yes, I was responsible. Take this into consideration when you're reviewing my performance and handing out raises and bonuses. So every attorney, no matter who they work for and what capacity, typically has to do billing. But when you're in the private sector, you live and you die by your billing. You have a billable minimum and it becomes harder and harder to meet it. And it doesn't help when you're doing things like what Jennifer's doing, because she's making it harder and harder. There's another Easter egg that says meeting with Mallory at 4:30. So Mallory was an attorney both in the comic book saga and here. They briefly introduced her last episode when she came in. And Dennis Bukowski hit on her and she's like, glad to not be involved in this case, and left. In the office, she turns out to be kind of a foe of Jennifer's, but more on a professional level overall than anything else. But she's meeting with Mallory, and it's not unusual for people, whether they're on the partnership track or not, to have inter-office meetings, even with people who aren't on your team. But Mallory is on her team. And if she's heading up the superhuman division, then Mallory is subordinate to her. Mallory is junior to her, and Mallory might not like that. We still have 5 more episodes in this series. That's plenty of time to take what you're seeing on the screen and really see that translate out into how difficult Jennifer's life is making, and some of it, or becoming, and some of this is Jennifer being the architect of her own demise. Then we see things like order more chopsticks, stop wasting chopsticks, order those Cheetos you saw. Like, that's not stuff you're going to put on a law office, list of things to do. The law office has every right to go in there and see this stuff, right? She is drafting cease and desist orders. One of them does include Runa from last week versus Anthony Puglisi, because Runa did threaten him last episode, so I'm not surprised that's going on. She has another Easter egg in the to-do list, researching privacy rights. This might be having something to do with down the road, whether it's just for superhumans in general or X-Men/mutants specifically. You do have the Mutant Registration Act. I will say researching privacy rights might also translate out to her helping superhumans defend against being compelled, maybe by a court order or law otherwise, to sign the Sokovia Accords. I'm pretty sure the Sokovia Accords are going to play back in. I tried to find a version of them online. There's something just really short on there. So unless one way or another we're provided with something more in depth, it seems super simplistic, but I'll try to do a separate video on that. Read blue file. I'm not sure what that means. Lee versus Byrne is great because you had 2 comic book artists, Jim Lee and, I'm on Alive. So Byrne, Byrne is another comic book designer. Let me just pull it up live because that's going to bother me. That's going to bother me. John Byrne. Thank you. Whew. And John Byrne and Jim Lee both worked on X-Men, Uncanny X-Men stuff. So that really bothered me because, like I said earlier, in 1986, I got pulled into all this stuff because I fell in love with the Uncanny X-Men. And then Uncanny X-Men and X-Men had parallel titles going on for a while. I bought it all. So I think research privacy rights is going to have everything to do with, in the short term, the Sokovia Accords. Lee versus Byrne again. Jim Lee, John Byrne, just updating my notes for videos. Find direct contact information for Wong, which she gets later. Kraft versus Soleil. I'm going to look that up. I'm not going to bog everybody down with this now. Research precedence or the likeness of Miss Pete. So I have to look into who that's going to be, but Pete versus Runa is a listing right under there. So Runa's probably going to leave in her wake a ton of victims. So one thing that I will tell you from the everyday life experience of an attorney is that, once you get like a serial defendant or a serial plaintiff, you can end up grinding out a whole bunch of cases against a party, right? So they've represented Dennis Bukowski as a victim against Runa, the shape-shifting elf. So now anybody else who reads that they took care of a case successfully in the news or in any sort of people, there's spiders online that can crawl to see like parties suing parties and what law offices represent them. And so people can be like, oh, Runa got me. Who do I go to? Oh, I want this law firm as I'm doing my research, right? Or I might, unless a file is sealed from the public, criminal files are typically sealed from the public. What Runa did to Dennis Bukowski was civil. So a civil file isn't typically sealed from the public unless you have a junior or minor, I should say, involved in that situation, which definitely was not the case. Or if there's any trade secrets or any sort of security issues, then probably counsel for the defendant would have made a motion to have the civil record sealed. But the courts generally don't want civil records sealed. It's bad enough we don't tend to have access to criminal cases as the public has the right to know. Just because your client's going to get embarrassed, if you're representing a defendant, let's say, and things don't go their way, you can have something sealed just to protect their reputation from being blemished, as it is going up to the United States Supreme Court. Truth is an absolute defense against any claims of slander, libel, defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and or economic duress. Anyway, so I don't know about Kraft versus Sule, but I know that they've already won once against Runa, and one way or another, this firm is just gonna, grind out case after case against her. If she's got money on her, she's just gonna pay and pay and pay. And or if they can't collect against her, I will say this, a lot of folks go, oh, you're going to get a judgment against me and it's not going to be worth the paper it's printed on. Don't even waste your time. This is not legal advice. Let me throw out the disclaimer. This is legal issue spotting, because facts and circumstances can change things, but in a broad brushstroke sense, I mean that, you could go and try to collect against somebody. You can get a judgment. If you win a case and you get a judgment in your favor, you can try to collect, of course. If you document that you can't get enforcement, you can't get any or all of the money back that you were supposed to get, like if you're Dennis Bukowski from last week against Runa, you can, again, fact and circumstance dependent, but you can end up, getting the documentation so that you can write off as a loss what you can't collect against your taxes. So you're still going to get a remedy. You might have wanted the money. You might have wanted one payment. You might have wanted everything all at once. But usually you can, broad brushstroke, legal issue spotting, you might be able to get a write-off against your taxes, even if it has to be amortized over a number of years, if it's like a really big amount. So all these people might be suing Runa, hoping that they can get money from her, of course, but if they can't, they might be able to get a judgment and down the road at least get a credit against income, maybe. Then there's a Jansen class action. I'm wondering about that last name, but I have to research it. Of course, at the bottom of this long to-do list that goes on for screens and screens, at the bottom it says finish dating profile. So she goes on Matcher to do that because it's easy to knock out. She uses her professional Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway headshot as her profile image. That's kind of sad, but she does it. And her profile is completed. And again, this has got to be the third or fourth Easter egg already, Mephisto Easter egg, because there's a bunch of flames going up in the background like it's Hellfire when she's completed her Matcher profile, which I thought was hysterical, because you've already had like 3 Easter eggs, and it's like, just in case you forgot, kind of feels like Mephisto. And it continues all the way through the end credits, just about. So the Nikki's in her office, and then Wong comes and portals in, and he says he has a legal situation of the greatest importance. This is important because the way they lay it out, Jennifer's concerns about the case that Wong wants to bring, even though he's acknowledging that it's going to be a case of like first precedence, it's going to be a new case, and it's going to set a legal precedence, it's kind of weak given the facts and circumstances. And Jen kind of tells him that from the start. Wong isn't going to get an easy victory here in the courts. Hey, Second Street Marvel, what's up? Good to see ya. Good to see ya. What did you think about this episode? I know you're going to do your own breakdown, so make sure you subscribe to Second Street Marvel and watch his breakdowns as well. Very nice. Totally Mephisto confirmed. I think I'm on my 4th Easter egg already, which is crazy. So Wong's concern is that Donny Blaze, who we were introduced to before, is a fake magician. And so he identifies Donny Blaze as who I thought Madison was in my previous video, who is Madison. He identifies Donny Blaze as a former student of the mystic arts, so that's how he has his sling ring. And he was kicked out after like a week because he basically used the magic for ridiculous purposes, like having a keg party with a former frat brother. So he said, we kicked him out of Comertage, basically, and now he's in LA at the Mystic Castle performing cheap human tricks. Oh, Second Street Marvel said I thought it was pretty good. Man, they're really going whole hog on Miss Marvel, I will say this, and Second Street Marvel's here right now. I said it before, I'll say it again here. They're not just throwing just CD list characters at her, even putting aside Hulk and all, and the Abomination. I'm telling you, Mephisto's all over this. He really is. I sound like Eric Voss from New Rockstars. I know I do. But I mean, there's just too many Easter eggs now. So Donny Blaze has been using his sling ring. He's sending volunteers at these shows into realms for what Wong stylizes as casual fun. He has a grasp of the basics of interdimensional portals, but he's messy, and by sending people there, he's clearly putting them in danger. And so Wong warns practicing the mystic arts without the proper training not only endangers the people themselves, but it risks basically untethering the astral plane. And, we're already in the multiverse saga. Things are bad enough. Wong doesn't say it, but this could cause risks of incursions too. And or it could just be a mess because the astral plane is going to start spilling out onto our plane. And think back, if you watched Miss Marvel, to when they were discussing how the Noor dimension, if it spilled over into ours, it was just going to take it all over. And there's no reason why you wouldn't think that something like the astral dimension couldn't do that here. So that's dangerous enough, Mephisto aside. So Wong says we need to set a precedent for Donny Blaze so that no unlicensed persons can ever practice the mystic arts again. Now, Jennifer puts him through paces that I would definitely do as a lawyer. And by the way, Heavy Spoilers just sent out a notification if you like him. He got to 1 million subscribers. He was down to 500 more this morning when I got up. So good on you, Heavy Spoilers. Okay. So she asks, she didn't specifically ask if the practice of magic was licensed, but we know that it's not. Dr. Strange never mentioned, oh, thanks for giving me my license, oh, Ancient One. Paul is awesome. Yes, he is. He is well deserved. And something else just came through from you too. I wonder if people are going to get upset on Twitter about consent, like they did with Wonder Woman in 1984 after that date scene. They could. And we'll get to that in a minute, because even the book that she was reading, but her date towards the end, bad feminist. Oops. But she does ask other questions of Wong. Did Mr. Blaze sign an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement or a non-compete, meaning a non-compete clause? Like if he were to leave Kamar-Taj, was there any sort of documentation, electronic paper or both, that said, well, I'm going to leave and I'm never going to be a magician if I don't make it here? Or non-compete clauses can have, and the window of time has shrunk down to like 1 to 3 years. It used to be 5 years or more. There was a certain period of time that if you left the employ of a company, you had to incubate or not do anything that could be a competition with them, either anywhere on Earth or anywhere in a country or anywhere within a territory for a set period of time. So when she said, did he sign a non-compete, she meant a non-compete clause, and that's kind of what she was talking about. I agree with you, Second Street Marvel. People are weird, man. But Wong's like, no to everything. Then she says, was there a contract when he underwent training, which is a more broad-based thing? And you would think that there would be, but this is Kamar-Taj, and I don't think the Ancient One ever did paperwork. So obviously the answer is no. Wong explains that students simply just pledge themselves to be loyal servants of the mystic arts, which is really nice. And maybe for millennia, they've never had a problem, but there's always a first time. So every lawyer wants to molt off their skin and hair when they hear that nobody signed anything, because it's already made a tough case worse. But then in real world law, when you're going for a case of first impression, you're trying to set a legal precedent. Man, if you don't have anything in writing, anything electronic, any sort of real tangible evidence at all, I mean, they call in Madison as a witness, but even if she was the best witness on earth, which of course, spoiler warning, she's not, it would never have been enough. So I'm not surprised at how the judge handled the initial application that Jennifer made. We're going to get there in a second. But she still reserved her right to possibly rule in the plaintiff's favor, Wong's favor down the road, because she had a written motion to contend with. So this is where Jennifer's basically telling him, she doesn't come out and say it, but this is a rule in litigation. People lie, the evidence doesn't. He really doesn't have any evidence. He really doesn't have too much on his side. And Wong's all offended, saying, but Miss Walters, we're bound by the metaphysical laws of this time-space continuum. And Jennifer says the line that she says in a lot of the trailers, where she's like, but this is the American legal system. No judge is going to take anything seriously unless we do things by the book. Wong thinks it's the book of Ashanti, and she's like, no, the book of human laws. So Wong this time gives her his contact information because she now has him as a client. Then there's a scene change to the legalese bar. Nikki and Jen are mixing business with pleasure. I promise you, this is not an unusual thing. I did that for 17 and a half years. My paralegal and I might go out. She was a volunteer firefighter for one department. I was a volunteer firefighter for another department. So we even had that in common. So you would mix like business and pleasure, both at the office and outside the office. So it's not unusual because, and you can check this out with the American Bar Association, the amount of hours that an average attorney will work, billable hours, not commutation time, not things that you can't bill for, it can go as high as 60 to 80 hours a week. So you are living your life, doing your work, putting in your billing and trying to get paid, right? So she says that she finished the Pug versus Runa cease and desist order, because obviously Runa is giving Anthony Puglisi a hard time, like she promised him in episode 3 that she would. And then she also is celebrating that she just finished the Blonsky parole brief, because there's all sorts of paperwork you have to do before, during, and after securing somebody's parole. Somebody hits on them and they go away. And then Nikki's like, hey, did you finish your match or profile? And she sees that Jennifer put herself up as herself. And Nikki's like, do a profile as She-Hulk, because She-Hulk's cool, right? But Jennifer's like, she's still having this problem. They do their best in every episode to telegraph. It's not her struggling with getting powers or being able to manage or control them. Some people have lost their minds and said, why isn't she struggling with that? They really went out of their way to establish she's the Hulk's cousin. The family talks amongst themselves with both Bruce and Jennifer. So none of them are fazed by Hulks or superhumans or powers. So anybody who's critical of the series because she's not having this rend my garment, shake my fist to the heavens, why am I having problems with my superpowers? Drop it, because her big struggle is with her own identity. It's like she wants to compartmentalize and put She-Hulk on a shelf in emergency break glass, but she kind of can't at work. So she's accepted that by now. But she's like, in my personal life, especially my dating life, I don't need to be She-Hulk. But it turns out she kind of does. So she's still trying to compartmentalize away from She-Hulk whenever possible. Nikki does recommend that she sets up the profile as She-Hulk. She's like, no. And then she gets a date. So scene change. We're now at Cornelius P. Willows, owner and curator of the Mystic Castle. So that's kind of like Donny Blaze's boss. I do want to research this more, because I'm like, is Cornelius kind of a physical manifestation of Mephisto? Because up till now, we've had like 4 Easter eggs having to do with him. But we'll see. Jennifer is telling the owner, she's sitting in the office with Wong, her client. She's telling the owner to cease and desist using the mystic arts, employing people like Donny Blaze, who's using the mystic arts. Donny Blaze is making the case that you can't own or trademark magic. Maybe. There's a lot of things that you can't own or trademark. But then he makes a goof, because lay people will start showboating. They start off right, and then they really go off into the wild blue yonder, and they're wrong. He says you can't copyright art, but that's not true. She-Hulk's like, you kind of can, but you might have some broader points before that. So she hands them the cease and desist order. She tries to serve Donny Blaze herself. Attorneys can do that. It's never a good idea to do that. So this is where I kind of part ways with them there. her handing it and saying, please consider doing this, contact your lawyer, let's talk, but I'm not officially serving you, that's fine. But if she's trying to serve them and then go to the court as part of her motion that she makes later to say, oh, and I personally, did service a process against the defendant in this case, she can do that. Attorneys can even serve each other in court. It can be put on the record. Things are fine. But it's a mess if he's going to claim later, of course, he'd be lying, that he didn't get served. And you even see it here in the scene. He's like sticking it in his shirt and saying, you didn't serve me. And she's like, yes, I did. And, Cornelius is like tucking it back in the shirt because it's falling out, and they're giving her a hard time, which they kind of should be doing. Okay. Until a judge says otherwise. And so if Jennifer served the defendant, Donny Blaze, and Donny Blaze and his attorney later says, she has no proof that we ever got served. It's her word against his. He said, she said stuff is a mess. Judges hate that. And then they'd force her to have what's called a Travers hearing. And now she has to go all sorts of crazy to prove that she actually did serve him, call in her client. He's got to testify. It's a whole separate bill. Clients aren't happy. Law firms aren't happy. And she might lose if it's just he said versus she said. So no, I didn't like that. But I like a lot of what they're doing so far in all the other episodes. So then, she's just like, I'll see you gentlemen in court. They get up to leave. Her phone chimes, and it's a familiar matcher chime. And Donny is shaming her and saying someone's on matcher. So he's kind of just flicking her. Throughout a lot of the episode, he's very dismissive of her because cases of first impression, unless they win, they're just like they're spitballing into the wind or throwing spaghetti against the wall. A lot of people have the right to be like, I don't know, a judge isn't going to make me stop. There's no licenses to practice law. You're ridiculous. But that doesn't mean that an attorney shouldn't try. So she goes out on a date. There's a Wolverine type Easter egg here. It's kind of interesting. She's on a date with a clear loser who's joking about how he ended up getting a lifetime ban from Winnipeg, Canada. Second Street Marvel, if you're still here, Wolvie's from Winnipeg, Canada, right? That's like part of his background. They've kind of remixed his story several times throughout the Marvel comic book saga, but I do think I'm right. So it's kind of like a little hat tip to Wolverine. So the guy is a total loser. He goes, oh, well, after he tells her his whole self-indulgent life story, as can happen on dates, he asks her about what she does, which seems polite, but as soon as she starts talking about herself, he's like in the phone. It turns out he's in Matcher. He's still swiping. He's responding to people because he sees her appearance with her fuzzy hair and her mousy kind of look. And he's like, whatever. Even when he walks away, he tells somebody on the phone, yeah, she was a 6, right? So, and she's testing him because she knows what he's doing. So she goes from, I'm a lawyer to I head the superhuman law division. I'm a Hulk. I can toss around a mid-sized sedan like it's nothing. And he doesn't even blink. Then the bill comes. You get the classic stare down. He should be a gentleman and offer to pay or at the very least do Dutch treat, meaning they'll split the bill. I don't even care if he did that. It would have been okay. Nope. He gets his keys. She gets the bill. He's already declaring her to be like a 6 as he's leaving. Now they're in court. They're in front of Judge Hannah. Wong is with her. Jennifer reads for the record that they've filed a complaint and a preliminary injunction against the defendant, sounding on 2 causes of action. One is unfair competition. The second is gross negligence. I'm going to say that right now, this is a very broad, weak case. And if I were the judge, I probably would say, hey, if there's no contracts or this is not a licensed business activity under the laws of the state of California, at least, I'm going to dismiss the first case. Gross negligence is very much that spaghetti thrown against the wall kind of thing. If you're going to do a case of first impression, that might be where you win. But if, people lie, the evidence doesn't. Credibility contests can be hard to win. So I wouldn't have done that. These can always be dicey. Would I have gone for a preliminary injunction, or in New York, we often call it a TRO or temporary restraining order? to restrain Donny Blaze from continuing to portal unsuspecting people into different dimensions, sure, I would have. But unfortunately, this gets denied. But the judge is still going to, hear them out and is still going to issue a decision on the motion. She does say it's going to take a couple of weeks. That's not unusual. That's also part of the reason why you should, if you were Jen, go for the TRO or the preliminary injunction. Because at least if it's granted until the decision is made, Donny Blaze might have had to have sat there and not practiced magic, or at least not done real magic. He could have done sleight of hand. Wong wouldn't have cared about that. But Judge Hannah does spot that this is a very difficult case and says, I find it hard to believe that a magic trick in and of itself constitutes gross negligence. It's a hard case to make. Do you have any witnesses to corroborate your claim? Now, this is a for TV sort of thing, because honestly, you're not going to get to a hearing, a trial, or even a hearing. Jen's filed a motion as part of the exhibits in her motion. She should have had a signed affidavit or an affirmation. Affidavits for most people, affirmations can be for attorneys and some licensed folks. But for an everyday regular lay person, affidavits will do. And the judge should have had, as part of the exhibits to She-Hulk's motion, there should have been a written and signed and notarized affidavit from the non-party witness that she's going to call. So asking that question is not really real either. But Wong, Portals, and Madison as a surprise witness, which again, the judge didn't have to necessarily entertain, but she does. Madison, of course, has a drink in her hand. She's wobbling around. She thinks Wong is in court because he's been caught driving and texting. So she gives crappy advice, as lay people often do, no offense, and says, hey, you were calling 911. Tell them you were calling 911 and they can't prosecute. And Jen's like, that's not true. Sit down. So Wong prays to someone for extra mercy. Again, this is my first viewing, so I have to go back and see who it was. And, the judge isn't taking Madison seriously the way she swears herself in. She's handing her drink to the court officer and saying, you can drink it, I wasn't sick. Like, she's just a dope. So Jen then asks Madison to describe the night when she participated in Donny Blaze's show. You can see that Blaze is very uncomfortable. His attorney isn't loving this either, because this is probably the most damning evidence that Jennifer's going to have. If she wins her case, it's going to be on the testimony of this individual. Because again, thus far, the practice of the practice of magic isn't licensed, and there's no contracts, there's no NDAs, there's no non-competes. So, she. So then Madison's testimony is basically like, first Donny Blaze gave me roses. It didn't smell like anything. And then he pushed me into a fireland. So Jennifer's like trying to get sympathy on behalf of Madison, and by virtue, Wong. Oh, these portals are dangerous. Oh, they're sending people to places that they could be in a big threat. So she goes, that must be terrifying. How did you escape? So this is another. I'm up to 5 Mephisto Easter eggs at this point. If you're just coming in, go back and watch. There were 4 up till now. Madison testifies, I made a pact with a demon that I cannot discuss. And otherwise, he said he would reap my soul and the souls of all whom I love. And she's using air quotes, which Wong used to describe Donny Blaze as a magic user. He didn't take that seriously. Now she's mimicking what Wong did, but she should be concerned because this is totally Mephisto, okay? And or she's totally making deals with the devil. And they continue to play upon that later. I think we get up to like 6, 7 Mephisto Easter eggs if you count everything I said up to now and the last 1 or 2 that we get later. So she goes, so she's made a pact with the devil to get out of there. The devil who had 6 drops of her blood, as she testified before, or as she told Wong before. So she names the demon as Jake, which is stupid. Cornelius says, I know Jake. Now, remember what I said earlier. If Cornelius himself isn't Mephisto in the flesh, because in the Ghost Rider origin story, that definitely came into play, then he's like some sort of connection to Mephisto. So Cornelius is like, I know Jake. And then, she finishes her testimony. Madison does. Jake opened up a portal and dropped me off at Wong's house. And that's how we became besties, which Wong is really embarrassed, but he's not too embarrassed given what happened at the end credits, which was totally funny. So Jennifer's trying to rehabilitate this witness because she's making like too flip about this, but the judge might be able to see it's not cool that you're doing deals with the devil to get out of there and you have to make some pact with him. Clearly, Madison's in danger, whether she appreciates that or not. I think that plays into why the judge doesn't just dismiss the whole case sua sponte or from the bench. So, without any further provocation. So Jennifer says, how would you describe your emotional state during this saga? That's a dangerous question. I'm not sure I would have asked it because Madison's acting way too flip. You've got testimony that you can get traction on. You really shouldn't mess it up if you think that the witness who's giving you testimony is going to wreck it or dilute it. It's a very careful game because obviously these people aren't on marionette strings. But again, I was a civil litigator for 17 and a half years. I might have just left it. But Madison's like, great question. At first it was fun, then it was scary, then it was fun again, then spooky, but in a fun way. Which, of course, defense counsel gets up to move to dismiss because he feels like this is now unraveling the potential danger argument, the danger to society, the danger to these individual folks. So, defense counsel makes a motion to dismiss. So this is a preliminary hearing. That's appropriate. He could also make a motion for summary judgment. I kind of went over the difference between those two things last week. So his application to move to dismiss the complaint is because Donnie's performance is harmless. This isn't something that should be managed. This isn't something that the law needs to weigh in on. This is fun and entertainment purposes only. He says Donnie's performance is a fun and spooky performance, which is a sweet spot for magic. You cannot copyright magic itself. So there is precedent for that. Jennifer jumps in, and I might even do a video on this, but I'd have to look up Californian law to make it a good video. She says, because I'm in New York, she goes, the precedent that you're referring to is for card tricks and disappearing women. Like if they put a woman in a box and she disappears and stuff like that. You can't copyright those things. Jen says, but this is different because the mystic arts involves real magic. So there's a real threat to the people who are involved in this, whether they gave their consent for this or not. There's certain things that the law will not allow you to consent to do. Or they're not getting true informed consent, Donny Blaze, when he's opening up his portal and basically like, bye. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what's happening. And he's certainly not letting them know any risks before he sends them. Donny Blaze is very self-centered. He's only worried about himself and his career. He's taking this all too flip. Of course, that changes in a little bit. So Donny gets up and says the line for the title of the episode, is this not real magic? He changes the color of his suit with a smoke bomb or whatever. The defense attorney is sitting there twirling around a magic scarf. Cornelius is playing with a knot and then doing the classic magic trick that you stretch out the rope and the knot's gone. They're not taking this seriously. But again, this is a case of first impression, and Jennifer doesn't have the best evidence to go with. Madison's not an awesome witness, but like I said, her earlier testimony, the judge is not going to just dismiss the case. The judge asks for order. Wong gets up to really explain why this is so dangerous. They should have sworn him in as a witness. You can't just take over and hijack a judge's courtroom, but whatever, this is TV, right? So he goes, Your Honor, well, actually, he calls her Your Highness, which is funny because she's not a queen. He goes, the case travels beyond these courtroom walls, which he's right. The man you see is seeking to wield the power of gods. He's doing it irresponsibly. That places us on the edge of a precipice. A man in the mortal realm has the ability to cause a ripple so great that it reverberates through every dimension, and that ripples through galaxies, and it has the ability to destroy all life. At this point, he is discussing the possibility of an incursion. If you watch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, spoilers there too, without getting into it, Stephen Strange caused an incursion by dreamwalking and then inhabiting the body of a zombie and dreamwalking with that. So, when you're messing with magic past a certain point, it can really mess things up and cause things to collapse in on each other and realities to destroy one another. At least one reality, like the astral plane, could come in and destroy the earth. Just like in Miss Marvel, the concern the Red Daggers had was that the Noor dimension, if unleashed through the veil, could destroy the earth as well. It's kind of an incursion-esque sort of thing. So Wong is so serious because he should be. But so it's even funnier when Madison's all tipsy and just slurring and going, case closed. And Judge Hannah's like, no, this case is far from closed. And because of the potential danger that Madison was in fact, the very real danger that Madison was in, the judge doesn't just dismiss the case, because minus that bit of testimony, she would have. I all but guarantee you she would have. So she says, I'll review the plaintiff's motion. You'll get my decision in a few weeks. Again, that timetable is typical. Jen does remind the judge that she asked for a preliminary injunction. Again, in New York State, I'd stylize it as a TRO, or a temporary restraining order, to stop Donny Blaze from continuing to engage in potentially dangerous behavior. Blaze objects. This is my life. This is my livelihood. He throws more smoke. He's got a purple sash. His lawyer's sneaking a cute little bunny behind it. Judge Hannah's all, stop throwing smoke bombs. How did he get through security with that? But she does think the bunny's cute, and the courtroom thinks the bunny is cute. The attorney's really doing his best for the defense to get people to like his client and everything having to do with his client's practice of magic. Obviously, we don't see any casting of portals going on. Obviously, we don't see any demons or devils or Mephisto or anything like that in the courtroom. So, it's a flimsy case if you don't have more. Madison's testimony might not be enough to win. So Judge Hannah is like, I'll deny the application for a preliminary injunction, as this does involve his livelihood. Now, that alone might not do it, but again, they haven't proven beyond a reasonable doubt that this is absolutely dangerous. They've raised the legal specter that it could be, and the judge is going to consider things. But as of right now, it's his livelihood. This is how he makes money, and this isn't the best case in the world. So for now, I'll take the risk that a couple weeks will pass and everything will still be okay. So she does leave the door open for things to go plaintiff's way. But understand that if Madison hadn't mentioned, I'm going to guess Mephisto, who called himself Jake, which is funny, I don't know that she would have gotten that far. So Donny crows that real magic prevails, which of course is a joke. He holds up his purple cloth. He says, I also have a bird, but it's really just him flipping the bird off to Wong. And the audience is applauding. So Donny's showmanship is winning them over. Now they're not a jury, but who cares? Wong says, to Jen, if we send Donny to the mirror defense dimension, he probably won't even die. But Jennifer's like, no. Wong was citing to doing stuff like this last time. And she's like, no. This will ruin her case. Please don't. All Madison's concerned about is she wants to go on a date with Wong to go get froyo. and then we can talk about the Sopranos and stuff. And Wong's like, fine. So I guess he's seeing Madison? Oh, it gets even better later. So apparently they were watching more Sopranos together in the meantime. So now we have a scene change. We're back in Jennifer's apartment. She's asking Nikki to get something prepared tomorrow. She's clearly unaware that tomorrow's Saturday. This happens after it's been 23 years of being an attorney, 17 and a half working for larger firms. I know what it's like. The whole week blurs. And you're talking to your paralegal and your staff about what needs to be done tomorrow. And they're like, tomorrow's a weekend. We're not coming in. Because staff doesn't do that unless it's an emergency. And the partners don't want to pay them overtime if they don't have to. So it's like, okay. So then Jen sees that she has no new alerts on Matcher because, again, she set up a profile for herself. So she creates a profile for She-Hulk, taking Nikki up on her advice. She does the fourth wall break, telling us she's not proud of this, but like she wants some matches, right? She gets a ton of matches very quickly. So now we have the scene change with the guy that last week, well, no, a couple weeks ago, I told you with episode 1, I'm like, we've seen the guy who's with the newscaster that ends up coining the term She-Hulk. This is one of the guys that she goes on a date with later on because we'd seen a bunch of trailers. And it's true. So, of course, the guy's totally a jerk. You know, all he's concerned about is how much he can deadlift. He thinks he's deadlifted more than her. He hasn't. But you'll note that with him and throughout, when she's in the She-Hulk form going out on the dates that she got through her She-Hulk profile on Matcher, she's very sexy. She's very confident in this persona. There's no dried up, mousy little fuzzy haired lawyer here. Whether or not she knows that she's slipping into more confidence as a She-Hulk or not, I have to see how the rest of the season goes. If this is something that's just subconsciously happening versus consciously happening. So then we go on to the next guy, and I love it. As soon as somebody knows that you're a lawyer, they try to like slip in that they totally understand the law along with you. So he's like, oh, my movie just premiered at Sundance. Okay, good for him. That's not easy. It was actually about a lawyer. Okay, these things can happen. And then he goes, he blows it and shows his layperson card. He goes, his expertise is constitutional law. And that's how he became an attorney to the vice president. And it's so goofy because, like, if you're a lawyer, con law or constitutional law, you do it in 2 parts over the course of your first year. It's a first-year course. It is not mind-bending. We are not dealing with something that requires a separate bar, like trademark law. And I'm really cool with what they're going to do in the next episode with Titania and the trademark application. It's the best. So then the next guy was a fan before they were matched. He loved the battle with Titania in the courtroom. He's fawning all over She-Hulk like he's a fanboy of hers. You're incredible. And so, of course, she's still in her sexy, confident mode. Hey, Mike, what's going on? Hello. She's like, people use that word around me. Incredible, because the Incredible Hulk and all that from the TV show and the first couple of movies that involve the Hulk. It's funny. So they're laughing. And so he's asking her all these questions. Does she have these other superpowers? Does she have these invulnerabilities? She's not a comic book, and it's a lot to ask for a first date. She even says that. He's asking if she's indestructible, and already you could see her starting to get more defensive. Like, is he trying to figure out stuff because he's a super bad guy and he's going to attack me? And she even says jokingly, kind of half jokingly, I'm not trying to get myself killed here. And he's like, well, how about vibranium? Is that going to hurt you? And she's like, why? Do you have some on you? Do you want to test it out? Like, he's totally objectifying her now. As a fanboy, he's objectifying her. And he goes, no, you're so powerful. And she's okay with that. But then he says, you're quite a specimen. And that's kind of going back into objectifying her, which she doesn't like. And he's trying to stylize it as a compliment, but it doesn't work. So she does a fourth wall break to us again, saying, is there anything worse than dating in your 30s? I've been married for many years. I do not miss the dating game at all. A lot of this stuff, I mean, we didn't have dating apps back in the dark ages when I dated, but, you know, I can imagine everything going the same way. People objectify people that they go out with. They try to one-up them like the first guy did. Or somebody's like, you're a lawyer. Oh, I could take the bar, you know, buddy, you know? So then she goes out with the lucky guy that you've seen in all the trailers that she's got the hots for. He's a pediatric oncologist. So already you're like, whoa. By the way, he shows up wearing tone-on-tone green. I mean, he's really showing her that he's very attentive to detail. He's very sympathetic. He's very soft-spoken. He doesn't want to talk about himself. People always want to talk about himself and his cases. Tell me about you, which I could see anyway. If you're a doctor, you're like, enough. I don't want to talk medicine right now. Maybe on another date. But women always like to hear on the dating scene, everybody, tell me more about yourself. I'm sure men do too on a first date, right? Those are magic words. So he wasn't winning Jennifer over before. He's doing it now. So he's like, want to split some fries? And she's like, let's take him to go. My concern here is that, and this is where the mama comes out in the mama saga, why buy the cow if you're going to get the milk for free? Like, things are going well. He's respectful. He's polite. He's attentive. They seem to have chemistry. And she's already wanting to take him home. And, you know, I don't know. Why buy the cow if you get the milk for free? So, spoilers on top of spoilers. I wasn't surprised about how things went. So, we're back at the castle. Donnie's doing his thing. He has another volunteer on stage. He tries to cast the portal, and she's like, no. My friend was here last week, and she didn't like where you sent her. It was a parking garage, but still, this isn't a fun trick anymore. He's kind of become a one-trick pony. So she doesn't want to do that. So he tries to push her into closing her eyes, just going into the portal. And she's like, absolutely not. I'm not going into your weird fire hole, which everyone laughed at. He says, fine, I'll try something different. He conjures a white dove that flies around. It alights on the volunteer. Everybody's delighted. This is cool. Except the dove lays an egg and flies off. She's looking at the egg. Oh, how cute. It hatches and a demon comes out of it, a winged demon. And everybody's like freaking because it's nasty. Donny Blaze thinks he can handle this. Okay, you were at Connertage for a week. You're lucky you have a sling ring guy. So he casts a portal into the floor, and it totally looks like hell down there. It does. The craggy rocks, the fire, okay? We've had how many references to Mephisto and devils and demon and evil magic, right? Definitely you could see the Midnight Suns, a lot of hat tips to them too, and not just a couple things to Ghost Rider in the beginning. So he kicks the beast into the portal. He goes to take a bow, but the portal can't be closed. And so now a ton of those things come out of the floor, and everyone's freaking out. Scene changes. Wong's watching TV. He's all sad and mopey. I think he's watching like a Sopranos funeral. Donnie blazes in and he explains the situation and he needs help. So Wong says, just for the record, I'm doing this for the universe and not for you. Donnie says, great, what can I do to help? Wong goes through the portal and says what you've seen in the trailers, call my lawyer. So we're back to Jen's house. She and the oncologist are sitting on the couch. He's showing her what seems to be a non-smarmy, sympathetic bedside manner. And it feels like a therapy couch in a way, the way she's just unloading at him, which again is kind of coming on too strong and kind of getting too personal too quickly. But it seems to me that he's still trying to be understanding. Tell me more about how you feel. But then the phone's ringing. It's Donnie. She won't pick up. She puts it on silent. The guy's telling her, I gotta say, this date's the best thing that's happened to me for a while. Swipe dating is so dehumanizing. Everybody treats you like a soulless avatar. Live on the replay, let me know if you've ever messed around with those apps. Do you feel like that? I mean, sometimes you can meet people on social media and it can kind of feel very soulless. You can create what's called parasocial relationships, but they can be very two-dimensional without more care on both sides of the party. So it's kind of like a here, buddy, I know what you're talking about sort of thing. But, She-Hulk's just digging on him and she throws herself at him, which, again, I know this channel's called the Mama Saga. I'm the mother of a teenager, and I have to tell you why buy the cow if you're just going to give the milk away for free. She's coming on like a ton of bricks to him. Then he spills wine on himself. He removes the shirt. He's got it on the couch. He's still showing himself to be a gentleman, even though she's coming on like a ton of bricks. He removes himself. He gets some, what does he get? Club soda. He's applying it to the stain. He's trying to fix things. And she leans in to kiss him, which is just like, okay, girl, take a beat. And then Wong appears. He's portaled himself in. And he's like, why aren't you answering your mobile phone? And I just started laughing. Oh, Second Street Marvel saying hi to Mike. What's up? So Wong then explains that he needs her help. He's guiding her through the portal. She's still making goo-goo eyes at the oncologist, like, girl, stop, come up for air. And Wong's growling that he's dragging her off, feeling like he's her dad, which I thought was funny. Wong wants her to fight the demons. He's repairing the portal and then throwing them in. So the demons aren't dying, and Jennifer's like, all of this is like billable hours, keep in mind, which is so like real life. As an attorney, like I said earlier, it's hard. Attorneys are expected to bill like 40, 50 hours a week minimum. And there's so many things that don't count as billable hours anymore, including for the most part, transportation, commutation back and forth to court or to clients' offices and stuff. And it gets harder and harder to meet that deadline. So that was a concern of hers earlier. It's a concern of hers now. So Cornelius and Donny are crawling to safety. Donnie's apologizing to Cornelius. Well, it's Cornelius's place, so I guess so, but I wonder again about Cornelius's connection to Mephisto and magic anyway. Jennifer is going on and on about finally meeting a great guy who's hot. Not that looks matter, but it does. She says this, and it comes into play towards the end of the episode. She ends up, being on the other side of the equation of what she's saying now. So she throws a demon against the Ghost Rider type Easter egg. So if you missed it before, there it is. And it hits the floor and then it gets bigger. And she's holding up a slathering demon towards the end because she and Wong are getting rid of them all. And Wong can close the portal now. And of course, she's applying unfair leverage to the opposing side and says, hey, would you be willing to agree to the terms of our cease and desist order? An argument might be made by a defense attorney later that she attempted to extort them to agree to the arrangement, or that it's unfair leverage on his client to get him to consent to sign a contract that could end up being rescinded by the court. But whatever. They agree. And she says her office will be in touch. So she comes back to her home. Mr. Perfect is lying on Jennifer's couch. She's not there. So the fact that he's lying on the couch, it's probably been a while. He's reading a book called Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. Of course he is. And Jen is portaled into the room and lands on top of him. They go off to bed. And then it's the next day. You hear the song Heaven on Earth playing from the 80s. She's making breakfast. A text comes in from Nikki. Good morning, sunshine. You owe me some dirty deets. But first, you'll never guess who's making the news again. So Jen turns on the TV. It's Tattle. And they are talking about the fact that there's the supporters of the Free Titania movement. Because remember in episode 1 and 2, she got in trouble. But her defense attorneys were trying to say her blood sugar was low. And that's why she freaked out. She was in traffic court. Things weren't going her way. She has a physical condition. Her blood sugar was low. And she wigged out. So, don't get her in trouble for what she did and maybe even dismiss the case. The fact that they mention a Free Titania movement calls to mind the Free Britney movement that happened. And Britney Spears finally got her dad kicked off of the conservativeship, and now she's on her own. So apparently Tattle tells us, the audience, that all charges have been dropped against Titania for what happened at the courthouse. Mr. Perfect comes into the dining room area. Second Street Marvel, hey Trinity, what's going on? Says Jen certainly overlooks some should be obvious things. Yeah, well, she's desperate to find Mr. Right, as many people are, or Miss Right, depending, right? But this is the why buy the cow when you get the milk for free thing. Plus, looks shouldn't matter, but they do, she jokes. But Mr. Perfect sees her as Jennifer Walters and doesn't know who she is because she was in She-Hulk form when they, So she identifies herself as Jennifer Walters. She's not in She-Hulk form. She's just Jen. And you can tell from Mr. Perfect's reaction, this isn't going to go anywhere after this. He already got what, I would say he got what he wanted, but the way they played him off, maybe he would have wanted a relationship with She-Hulk down the road, but it was She-Hulk that he was interested in it anyway. So once he sees Jennifer Walters, looks shouldn't matter, but they do. Well, Jennifer is, as the other guy that she went out on a first date with, maybe a 6, and She-Hulk's a 10. And, if you want somebody that's tall and green, somebody that's short and petite with, really fuzzy hair that might otherwise dress mousy, they're too different. So again, I kind of am not saying that Mr. Perfect is a total jerk here. So he's like, oh, this is unexpected. Like, he's very underwhelmed by Jennifer. And Jennifer's like, I made breakfast, but he's got the wince face on. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go. And don't worry about the sweater. Like, he doesn't even want a sweater. He just wants to go. He might have regrets. And now he's seeing that this is the other half of the equation, and he didn't even know that Jennifer Walters came with She-Hulk, or this is what she was going to look like. Trinity or Second Street Marvel says Doc wants a woman who will step on him, and he laughs. Hey, listen, people have their particular proclivities, right? A lot of folks, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of folks have a type. And it's hard. You can end up having a relationship with, coupling up with, marrying if you wish, being with somebody who doesn't fit your type. And your type might not have to look perfect like they're a supermodel. But if you like broad shoulders and blue eyes, you're gonna want a man, a woman, a person, broad shoulders, blue eyes. That's just your thing. You can transcend looks, but this guy was like, there's too many rude shocks and I just can't. Plus, I mean, no offense, I don't want men to have to out themselves live or on the replay, but if a woman just jumps straight in bed with you, I wonder all about whether or not you lose respect with someone who goes quite that fast. But that's a whole nother dimension to it. So she makes a mistake that a lot of single women, single men, single people can make. Mike says, Grace Randolph thinks that the fanboy she went out with on one date might be working with the bad guy that wants her powers. I think he was just a creepy fan. Yeah, that other guy, he might be a creepy fan. He might be. And I think even if that's all that it is, it could be more. And that'd be cool too. But I think it was just making the commentary that when we go out on first dates with people, we do tend to objectify things about them, whether superhuman goes into the mix or not. And people with their curiosity need to put a filter on whether it's a date or not, because you can be like asking a million questions and have a bunch of legit curiosity and all sorts of stuff, and it's still creeping the heck out everybody, like, whoa, too much. A lot of people don't have filters. And social media can be like that because it's a lot of arm's length stuff. But when you're in person with somebody, personally, professionally, romantically, whatever, and you start off the jump with them in real life, just no filter and just going at it, he may still be a creepy fanboy. But again, it's a commentary that maybe we need to be a little bit more gentle with one another. Trinity, Second Street Marvel says, yeah, I don't think you get a guy like John Bass to play a character like that and not use him more. He might come up again. The fact that he was trying to figure out what her weaknesses and other powers that she had, and would vibranium work against her. Don't forget the Wrecking Crew, those guys that came in at the end of episode 3. They were trying to pierce her skin with some sort of shot or injection. And when she's in Hulk form, that's not going to work. So, and remember the conversation they had in the car as the scene was wrapping up. So I was like, that's kind of a callback, quite frankly, to episode 3. So I wonder if he's involved with that whole crew overall, and who are they really working for at the end of the day. So Mr. Perfect can't get out of there fast enough. And then a delivery comes, and Jennifer's like, I can spot a process server a mile away. What's this about? And he goes, he didn't necessarily. I mean, the state of California, the rules might be different than New York procedurally, and I acknowledge that. But he did a lot of talky here, the process server, that most of them are just like, here, sign here, and if you won't sign, I'm just going to document that you got it. Kind of like how Amazon documents where they deliver your packages nowadays. And if she's going to object to being personally served, again, like I said earlier, the Travers hearing issue that could have come up if Donny Blaze really wanted to fight it, Travers hearings are a thing, and a lot of them can be avoidable. Because it's just extra time, extra complications, extra expense that nobody needs. But the process server says these are court documents filed on behalf of Titania Worldwide LLC. I could kind of see him saying that. Everything else, I think, is just service for the audience. So Jennifer's like, if she's coming after me because of her fight, she's delusional, which that would have been very easily defensible for her. This is where it kind of is just, this is just an exposition dump so the audience understands. The process server says she's suing you for misuse of a trademark. I can't wait to see where this goes. Like every episode, we're focusing on at least one potentially legal type issue. And so we're going to go into trademark law next week. You do need a special bar, at least in New York you do. I'm pretty sure in every state you do. You pass a bar, in my case, New York State bar, you can practice almost anything. Then there's maritime law that is its own separate bar for stuff that happens out at sea. And then the other bar that I'm aware of is for trademarks and oh gosh, I'm blanking out because I'm tired. But trademarks is one of them. You have to have a special bar for that. So we notice on the papers that get served, you have Mary McFerrin as owner of She-Hulk, trademark by Titania, a company. So that's your Titania LLC versus Jennifer Walters. Jennifer says, but She-Hulk's my name. And the process server's like, not if she trademarked it first, right? So there's a strong argument, I will say this up front, that when it comes to trademarks, first to the table can often win. Not always. So you have to have a ton of evidence to, I'm not a trademarks attorney. That's a separate bar. But from what I studied in law school, you can overcome it and say, listen, you shouldn't have granted her the trademark because there's a huge body of evidence, which in She-Hulk's case there is, that, the company used it, she adopted it, she was talking about this in several different interviews that she did. It could also be used or twisted by Titania's attorneys to say that Jennifer kept saying, but I didn't pick that name, the public picked that name. I don't want to use that name. Jennifer Walters is my name. How clever, because now you've got two layers going on. One where Jennifer was going through her personal struggle, I want to compartmentalize, I don't want to be a Hulk. Then, okay, by episode 2, fine, I'm a Hulk, but it's not the most important thing. She keeps trying to push it into the background. Now all these interviews could make Titania's case for her even more. Do I think Titania is going to win at the end of the day? Obviously not, but we'll see what happens because you have strong arguments on both sides of the trademark fence. So a lot of people think, well, if I just get the trademark first, I'm fine. Maybe not. But the argument is very likely maybe. So then we have another fourth wall break where Jennifer's like, kind of a bummer way to end this episode. Here's a fun tag. So we have the post-credit scene. In the post-credit scene, Madison is signing a document with a beast. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not there yet. As the credits are rolling, some of the imagery that you see is static from week to week, and some of it they change out. So last week, my favorite was when Emil Blonsky was going off on the bus from the prison, and he left all his 7 soulmates in the dust, crying. Here in the post-credit scene, you have Madison signing a document with a beast that very clearly looks like a demonic goat, which is one of the, forms of the devil. And the background is definitely a fiery hellscape abyss. So sure, to me, Ghost Rider and Mephisto are enemies. You've seen Ghost Rider, a couple of Easter eggs. This is like what? The 6th, 7th Easter egg having to do with dark magic and Mephisto. I mean, come on. Mephisto definitely has been revealed several times here. So She-Hulk is in another one of those credit running scenes. She's cleaning off the demon goop on her body in a public bathroom before she goes back to Mr. Perfect. Then there's another one where Wong ends up totally sending Donny Blaze to the mirror dimension, and he's like, got you. Kind of like what happened to Adriana, okay? Because they kept saying they wanted to get rid of Adriana. She was too much of a liability. Wong, you had the shovel imagery from Morris. You bury the body. You have the whole Sopranos thing going on. They kill off Adriana, and so here Wong is just burying his, someone who is too much of a liability to the practice of the mystic arts. Yes, the devils are in the details, Bev. I agree. Second Street Marvel. Oh my God, totally Mephisto confirmed. We all know that, Eric Voss from New Rockstars is probably going to put out like the fastest Mephisto video ever. So at the end credit scene, Wong and Madison are together. They're obviously Doc and Boots are doing something. They've gone out for froyo, they've hung out, and now they're here. She's dressed in a casual hoodie. Sure, because they're in a relationship. She doesn't have to get all glitzy anymore. They're watching TV together on the couch. She's grilling Wong about all of his likes and dislikes of what he likes to do and eat and drink. And in the middle of it, she's all, I love you. And Wong's not driving her away or telling her not to say that, which is so funny. And I love how she asks if he likes gin and tonic and challenges him to do bottomless gin and tonic. So like Second Street Marvel and I both know, there was the post-credit scene with Doctor Strange where Thor comes in. They're discussing Odin and Loki. Let's go get Loki, And while they're sitting there talking, Thor's got a huge bottomless glass or a mug of beer. So that's not only a Doctor Strange and Thor. That's a Doctor Strange and Thor Easter egg right there. Wong says that he's tried gin and yak milk, but never again. But then Madison asks him if he's got it. He's got more of it. And he says he does from the wedding, which is so casual. Like they must have been there together. Oh, yeah, from the wedding, back then. I'll get some for you. And I'm like, are these two like totally an item now? Like, that's so funny. So that's it. That's my first view through everything. You get the lawyer breakdown of stuff. There's one or two places where I part company with how they are showing things to be done procedurally. I know it's for an audience of lay people. They've done really, really good up to this episode, and there were plenty of things that they did right from a lawyer perspective. So it's going to be fascinating how they handle the trademarks action in the next episode with Titania. Titania has a super strong case of owning the trademark. Now, at the end of the day, if she wins in court, it doesn't mean that She-Hulk can't somehow buy or contractually obtain or have signed over to her the ownership of the trademark. By the way, she better be careful because she has to renew that and have everything filed timely, or the trademark will expire and someone like Titania can jump in and get it again. So I'm curious to see how they're going to handle it. We all know that She-Hulk ends up remaining She-Hulk after this. So it's just a matter of how she wins and what Titania gets out of her. So it's a very clever way to keep these guys being foes without it always being like break everything and smash, smash, smash. So Mike says, I'm enjoying the show, but I can see why people are not feeling it. I like it for what it is. It's a 90s courtroom comedy. Phase 4 already has all kinds of flavors. Some may just not like this flavor. That's always fine. It is fine with the movies as it is with the Disney Plus series. I like how they can go in deeper with the Disney Plus series. They can do more character development. And I'm thinking that they're doing the in-depth character development that they're doing for She-Hulk, for Miss Marvel, for example. Sam, who goes from being Falcon to Captain America. they're doing the in-depth character development that they're doing because these folks will be part of the next Avengers roster. It's going to last for a couple of years, and these may be some of the main tent poles for that team that remain for years to come. If you know that you're doing stuff for the next 5 to 10 years, the way they've been doing stuff up until now, right? Because it's been 14 years of them doing this, if you just simply count Iron Man in 2008 onward. So it's 14 plus years of storytelling. They're going one further for the audience by making the storytelling deeper, the character development deeper, so that the stakes are higher for these people. Like when they go and kill off Ant-Man, which they're totally gonna do. I've already put out 2 videos on my channel to talk about this. So there's an Ant-Man playlist on my channel. It's not super long now. I'm gonna go back and unpack the movies once I have a break between new stuff that's dropping to prep for, what is it, February 2023, when they have Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, Quantumania. They're not going to kill everybody off. And I'm telling you, it happened in the comics that there was a lot of death. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, Kang is way worse than Thanos and way more brutal. You haven't had the character development for Scott Lang or Ant-Man. Killing him off isn't going to hurt as bad as if they kill off or maim or seriously challenge or threaten Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Sam. You know what I mean? So, like, the stakes are higher when you've spent time with these characters and you've sat with them for a while. I think it just makes for more powerful storytelling. So I totally agree with you doing it, but Mike's completely right. This is kind of getting to be like a box of chocolates. Like, you're going to like some of them, you might not like all of them. Wong is now my new favorite character in the MCU. I love this show, but I can't wait for something more serious. Oh, I agree. And you're totally going to get that with the last installment of Phase 4. I mean, there is no way that you are not going to get a whole lot of death and sadness and bereavement in Wakanda Forever. And that's coming out in November. So we're just how many weeks away from that? And it's going to be a very bitter/bittersweet note to end Phase 4 on. Well, will Phase 4 completely be ended with that? Or do we have the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special? That may be the final end for it. And of course, we're going to get that before the end of the year. And that's going to give you some more character development, because for whoever they kill off or send away when you get to Guardians 3, that's going to be all the more powerful. I hope they don't kill off Rocket. He is one of my favorites. I know Trinity says, no, not Ant-Man. He's my favorite. I know. I like Scott Lang. I like how Paul Rudd's portraying him. I think it's pitch perfect, but I'm thinking they're going to kill off the Pym/Van Dyne older couple. And I'm pretty sure they're either going to kill off Scott Lang or they're going to seriously maim him. And Cassie Lang, his daughter, is going to have to stand in his space as stature. I don't think they're going to kill off the Wasp. I think if they end up killing Scott, the Wasp is going to be like to stand in his space to help with her. I know it's sad, but there has to be blood sacrifice for Kang to be taken very, very, very seriously. They have to up the ante over Thanos. They do. Ant-Man Paul Rudd is one of my favorites as well, says Mike. No, I agree. But something more serious is definitely after this, because that's going to be Wakanda Forever. The holiday special might be fun, but then we're going into Quantumania in February of 2023, and I'm telling you, that's going to be supremely brutal. It has to be. I still agree with the theory that I've floated several times on lives and edited videos on my channel. I do think that Miss Marvel is going to have to join with Captain Marvel and is going to have to join with Monica Rambeau, they're going to have to be like a trinity of powers. Aha, trinity. They have to have a trinity of powers to be able to help to defeat someone as powerful as Kang is, especially Kang Prime. Holy moly. They're definitely setting up Paul Rudd. I'm sorry. They're definitely setting up Scott Lang / Ant-Man to be sacrificed. He's too full of himself. He's too successful. And it kind of happened that way in the comics too. But, you know, hey, no one who dies ever truly dies in the MCU. I do have a nice edited video that's also going to come out. My editor's getting married, so my edited videos are going to be coming out all in a big slog next week. But one of the videos that I'm going to do is, I totally knew it. You guys know, Trinity and Mike, you guys know, I've called Iron Man coming back into the MCU. And I will have a video where Robert Downey Jr. does discuss a return. It's not going to totally be the way you think, but they will. It's not just fan service. They can't undo his sacrifice. But will there be an Iron Man after that? Yes. But Iron Man himself, like, people are like, oh, it'll be Ironheart. I'm like, nah, I kind of think she's going to be on Young Avengers, whatever they call that. It's probably Young Avengers. The main Avengers roster is still going to have an Iron Man. Iron Man is too important as a leader of that team to just, you know, he's God, you know. We just see a quick multiverse example of him. But Robert Downey Jr. also made it clear he's not coming back on the regular. Okay, he can't. He had an interview years ago where he said, I'm getting older, it's 60 pounds of gear, and then they're rigging me up on wires, or then I have to carry stuff. I don't do all my stunts, but then what I do, you know, pull off in 60 pounds of gear, it's just getting to be a lot. And I think he really just wants to be with his wife more and produce movies with her more. So I don't think he's coming back. And the same thing for Hugh Jackman. It's going to kill me to see somebody else be Wolverine. And who knows what they're going to announce at D23, but he's old. And he has given testimony saying that, I'm wearing the lawyer hat. He's done interviews where he said, I do not foresee myself coming back on the regular. I think the character arc for that version of Logan is over. Logan was the perfect way to finally put him to bed. I don't see myself coming back to really keep that character actively running. So, and you know, Trinity or Second Street Marvel is so smart. I think Rick Jones will be the MacGuffin of the MCU overall at the end of the MCU. There's no reason why you can't have that. I'm not disagreeing. Mike says, I heard a rumor that they're reshooting Wakanda Forever. Oh my God. That is so late. That is so late. Wow, if that's true, that is late. No kidding. Wonder if they could recast T'Challa in this film. That's a whole nother subject. I definitely want to, after Disney Plus Day is over, well, Disney Plus Day is today, I'm going to go watch a whole bunch of stuff and do live streams throughout the day. So check in with me live or on the replay, guys. If you haven't liked this video, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Shout this video out. If people are in other communities and they want to be heard more and have more input, this is a great place to do it. I'm definitely doing lives and replays. And yes, I normally have edited videos come out a bit more, but my video editor is getting married. So the week that he's actually going to be on his honeymoon, I can do nothing but live stream. So we're prepping a whole bunch of stuff right now. I heard they signed Chris Evans back as Mike. So let me address both of those things now, and I'll go back and unpack them in separate, like, lives or videos. Yes, definitely Chris Evans has been signed to come back. He's kind of been making noise that under the right circumstances, he would come back. Do I think he's going to be in Captain America 4 World Order? Yes. Do I think he might show up otherwise? Probably. Because he definitely, as part of the Time Heist, was in and out of the multiverse. I definitely feel comfortable with. Them reshooting Wakanda Forever. I mean, listen, Chadwick Boseman dying honestly broke my heart. That guy was way too young. He was very tasteful about how he kept things private and he passed, which made it even harder because he didn't seem to be like this really bad dude. You know, it killed me to, and Ryan Coogler had like such a hard task. Because how do you do the storytelling within 1, 2, even 3 years of that death and be tasteful? T'Challa is very important to the Marvel comic book saga, obviously. And I know that the actress who played Shuri they felt that she was a pain in the butt. It's hard because I want to say that they should recast, just like, you know what? Let me do it like this. They need to recast Wolverine. It'll suck, but they have to do it. Hugh Jackman can't be playing this role at 1,000,000 years old. And the same thing with Iron Man. It sucks. They know they're going to be doing stuff for the next decade. They have a lot of it plotted out. They have some of it shot. They need younger blood. They need younger blood. Now, Chadwick Boseman would have fit that bill, and I really don't know how someone's going to look or sound or fill that part any better than he did. But I'm going to argue that they have to do something. You can't, they could have a Black Panther in the Avengers, but T'Challa was just too important. So I didn't, excuse me, I've been going on for almost 2 hours. I love talking shop, so don't get me wrong. But I just have a really hard time seeing that they're reshooting things. I haven't heard that they're going to put out the movie later. So I don't know what they're going to do. Is it impossible that they can't like last minute shoot scenes and get them in there? No, it's not. And as you guys both know, and as anybody else watching this live or on the replay might know, they'll release movies and even things on Disney Plus and smooth them out and continue to fix them in the weeks afterwards. Fixing everything from the uncanny valley, like what they did with She-Hulk between the trailers and now. Even with WandaVision, they smoothed some stuff out, especially in the post-credit scene of the final episode. And they had to, because of COVID and such, take Doctor Strange out of it. I think it would have been more powerful if he was in it. I think WandaVision was great despite that. I mean, with what they had to work with and how they had to pivot, they did an excellent job. I loved WandaVision. But are they putting in more content? Maybe. I don't know. They can't completely dice up what they have without adjourning it and pushing it further into 2023 to do that. So add some stuff, sure. Tweak some stuff, absolutely. I don't know. I'm going to look into that more, Mike, because this is the first I'm hearing of that. The Chris Evans thing, I'm not surprised about. Oh, so how do y'all feel like totally Mephisto? There's no way. They're way too heavy-handed in this episode. It's going to be Midnight Suns. You knew they were getting more on tap anyway. I'm curious to see what announcements are going to be made at D23 about Blade. Again, it's going to be hard to replace the original version of Blade, but that was back in the 90s too, so they kind of have to. I mean, my God. Although, oh my God, and I'm just... The main, you guys know the name of the main actor in Blade. Oh my God, why am I... Not Mahershala Ali, that's going forward. Dang it, and I loved him. And he got in trouble for income tax evasion, I believe. Why am I blanking out on the actor's name? Because I'm exhausted. I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. But, I know that character said, that actor said he would be showing up in Blade, which is cool. He'll be a cool Easter egg. Dang it, I have to look that up. That's bothering me. That is bothering me. You ever have that happen to you? Damn it, I know the answer to this. Dang it. Oh, thank God. Wesley Snipes. That was going to bother me. That was going to bother me. Wesley Snipes. I'm so embarrassed because I loved him in that character. He was Blade. But do I think Mahershala Ali is a great casting choice? Yes. Did you guys see what they did with Daniel Radcliffe? Imagining him as Wolverine? That's pretty cool. So, all right. So I'm going to go off and see what they have. I'm going to go off and see what they have on Disney Plus and do live streams about that throughout the day. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.